Imagine this, a comedian standing on stage making people laugh. The same man just a few years later is standing in front of the world's most powerful leaders, not as an entertainer, but as the president of Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky's story is unlike any other. He wasn't born into politics. He wasn't a general or a career diplomat. He was an actor, a voice artist, a man who once played the role of a president on television, until destiny turned that role into reality. When war came knocking at Ukraine's door, many expected him to flee. Instead, he stood firm, declaring, "I need ammunition, not a ride." In that moment, he became more than a politician. He became a symbol of courage, resistance, and hope for millions across the world. But who really is Volodymyr Zelensky? How did he rise from the comedy stage to the battlefield of world politics? This is the untold story of Ukraine's unlikely president and how he changed history forever. Volodymyr Zelensky's journey embodies one of the most powerful contrasts in modern history, a transformation from entertainer to statesman. Born in Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine, in 1978, he trained as a lawyer but found his calling in entertainment, co-founding the comedy troupe Kvartal 95, competing in and winning Dancing with the Stars Ukraine, starring in films, performing stand-up, and even providing the Ukrainian voice for Paddington Bear. His popularity soared with the hit satirical TV show Servant of the People, 2015 to 2019, where he played a humble teacher who unexpectedly becomes president after a viral anti-corruption rant. The show resonated deeply with Ukrainians frustrated by political elites, and its success blurred the line between fiction and reality. In 2019, Zelensky entered real politics under a party named after the show, and in a historic landslide, he won over 73% of the national vote, defeating incumbent Petro Poroshenko. This extraordinary leap, from comedy stages and TV screens to campaign rallies and presidential palaces, captivated global media and created a narrative of life imitating art. The contrast of a comedian suddenly becoming commander-in-chief became symbolic. His acting and performance background provided skills in communication, timing, relatability, and emotional connection that few traditional politicians possessed. Internationally, this irony made headlines and shaped him into a global phenomenon, with audiences fascinated by how a man once known for jokes and satire transformed into a serious leader navigating Ukraine through crisis and war. This dual identity, entertainer turned president, remains one of the defining contrasts of his career and one of the most compelling stories of leadership in the 21st century. Volodymyr Zelensky's presidency was forever transformed in February 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, an event that thrust a former comedian into the heart of a historic crisis and redefined his leadership on the global stage. Facing imminent attack, Western allies reportedly urged him to evacuate Kyiv for safety, but he refused, defiantly posting on social media, "We are all here. We're in Kyiv. We defend Ukraine," a moment that echoed worldwide and solidified him as a symbol of resistance. Instead of abandoning his people, he countered offers of evacuation with one of the most iconic lines of the war, "I need ammunition, not a ride," signaling his unwavering resolve. As Russian forces bombarded Kyiv and advanced across Ukraine's borders, Zelensky stood his ground, wearing olive green attire and rallying citizens and soldiers alike with direct, emotional appeals for international military aid and sanctions against Moscow. His speeches to the U.S. Congress and European councils emphasized that this conflict was not only a battle for Ukraine, but a fight for democracy, a message that significantly influenced Europe's response and solidarity with Ukraine. As atrocities emerged, such as the Bucha massacre revealed after Russian withdrawal, Zelensky traveled to the devastated town to demand accountability and spotlight the brutal realities of war, turning global attention toward Ukraine's plight. Meanwhile, he personally connected with citizens through low-production selfie updates and video addresses from Kyiv, bolstering morale and fostering a sense of unity and authenticity unlike any traditional political communication. His perseverance under fire, leadership ethics, and transparent communication style swept him to international recognition, affirmed by titles such as Time Person of the Year, and by drawing foreign aid and military support that became essential to Ukraine's counteroffensive victories, including the liberation of Kherson and reprisals against Russian occupation, Encyclopedia Britannica. In that crucible of war, Zelensky emerged not merely as a head of state, but as the very embodiment of national defiance. His choice to stand, to fight, and to lead defined his presidency and rallied a nation against seemingly insurmountable odds. Volodymyr Zelensky's political debut was a spectacle few saw coming, a comedian turned secretary of satire stepping into the shoes of a real public servant. In 2018, his entertainment company, Kvartal 95, officially registered a political party named Servant of the People, echoing his hit satirical series in which he played a history teacher who becomes Ukraine's president after condemning state corruption. This move wasn't immediately declared as a power play. Zelensky himself insisted the registration was simply to prevent political appropriation, but speculation swirled that he was preparing for a campaign. Then came December 31st, 2018, a moment that stunned the nation. Zelensky announced his candidacy during a New Year's Eve TV show on the 1+1 channel, overshadowing incumbent Petro. His strategy was unlike any Ukrainian politician's. He bypassed policy-heavy speeches and press conferences, advocating instead through short comedic clips and social media content, leveraging platforms like YouTube and Instagram to convey anti-corruption messages in a relatable tone. From the outset, Zelensky's campaign resonated deeply with a populace disillusioned by endemic corruption, oligarchic rule, and political paralysis. He positioned himself as an outsider, a figure of authenticity amid seasoned elites, calling for transparency, moral leadership, and generational renewal. Within months, he surged into pole position, securing 30.2% in the first round of voting against Poroshenko's 15.9%. The campaign culminated in a dramatic showdown at Kyiv's Olympic Stadium in April 2019, full of theatrical debate energy, where Zelensky captivated tens of thousands before winning the presidency with a historic 73% of the vote in the runoff. Almost immediately after his inauguration on May 20th of 2019, Zelensky reshaped Ukraine's political landscape, dissolving parliament and calling early elections for July 21st. His party, largely composed of fresh faces with little to no political experience, won an overwhelming majority, capturing over 43% of the vote, including 254 seats in the Verkhovna Rada, Ukraine's first ever outright parliamentary majority under a newly elected president. This sweeping victory embodied the electorate's thirst for radical change. Ukrainians responded to Zelensky's promise of a clean break from Moscow-influenced oligarchs and political stagnation. Zelensky's rise, propelled by his media presence, outsider image, and the fiction-turned-reality narrative, was unprecedented. Analysts describe it as a manifestation of virtual incumbency, where his screen persona gave him a credibility advantage over his political rivals. Backed by media assets, particularly the 1+1 network connected to oligarch Ihor Kolomoisky, the campaign sparked intense political debate, though Zelensky distanced himself from the idea that he was merely a puppet of established interests. When Volodymyr Zelensky assumed office in May 2019, after a landslide 73% victory, widespread public optimism accompanied him, especially with victory in hand, control over parliament, and a bold mandate for change. He immediately launched a sweeping reform agenda, signing or initiating dozens of reform bills aimed at abolishing parliamentary immunity, decentralizing governance, and streamlining bureaucracy, all moves designed to dismantle oligarchic power and root out corruption in Ukraine's aging. In March 2020, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, Zelensky rolled out the Great Construction Program, an infrastructure initiative aimed at modernizing roads, schools, and hospitals that also generated hundreds of thousands of jobs, though critics derided it as misused public funds. Parallel to domestic reforms, Zelensky prioritized peace. In December 2019, he engaged in Normandy format talks and a prisoner exchange, showing early diplomatic engagement toward resolving the Donbas conflict. However, the Minsk process stagnated soon after the Paris summit. While his campaign promises had emphasized peace in Donbass, anti-corruption efforts in economic improvement, by 2020 to 2021, his approval ratings had slipped, dropping from levels above 70% to under 40%. Prompted by unmet expectations, the pandemic, economic challenges, and the sense that entrenched interests still held sway. His government faced fierce pushback on anti-corruption agendas, with the Constitutional Court overturning key reforms, triggering a political crisis that Zelensky sought to resolve by proposing to dismiss the entire court, though lawmakers pushed back. Meanwhile, peace efforts were undermined by both internal protest and external pressure. Nationalist groups and war veterans protested Zelensky's proposed implementation of the Steinmeier formula, viewing it as capitulation to Russia. Despite these challenges, Zelensky kept pursuing European integration and sought to align Ukraine with democratic institutions, while negotiating carefully for territorial integrity and sovereignty in the face of continued Russian pressure. Bundesakademie für Gesundheitswesen by early 2022, as Russia massed its forces and threats intensified, Zelensky appeared seasoned, even though he was unprepared for the magnitude of the crisis to come. His presidency, while marked by earnest reform intentions and an actual infrastructure drive, great construction, was also defined by political pushback, legal entanglements, and stalled peace. In this critical pre-war period, Zelensky proved himself a leader shaped by ambition, constrained by reality, but steadily preparing for what would become his greatest challenge.